Hello everybody. In this video I want to show you how to apply the concepts of deconstruction and variations that we already saw in the previous video, link in the description for both, to real-life reference, so you can transform any picture into a cartoon. This video is taken directly from an upcoming course on character design I'm working on, so keep in mind that there is some context. That being said, watching those two videos should be more than enough for you to understand everything here. By the way, if you would like to help me during the production and get the course for free once it's ready, right now I'm making my special all courses bundle available again. That's 10 full courses on character design, background design, game art and Inkscape, about 70 hours of content, all for $19. It's only for a limited time until I finish the course. After that the bundle will be no longer available, and those who purchase it will get this new course for free in an update. That was all, continuing with the lesson. You cannot always rely on cartoon reference at the moment of making your own characters. Eventually you'll want to start using real-life reference, not only because of the risk of ending up with something too derivative of some other artist's work, but also because cartoons represent an already digested version of reality, and that will limit what you can do with it. We'll see later on the course that real-life reference is essential for a couple of things, but especially when you want to dress up your characters. It's important that you know how to take a real-life picture and make it fit with your cartoon character. Of course, we are building on top of our system of explorative copy, which already forces you to play around with the proportions and make exaggerated and cartoony-looking things. And yes, that is a great place to start with, because cartooning is all about playing with shapes and proportions. But there are more things to keep in mind when using real-life reference. So consider this lesson as a few tips to cartoonize real-life reference to use with our characters. Now, I'm not an expert cartoonist or draftman by any stretch of the word, but in my experience, I found 3 important elements or concepts to keep in mind at the moment of cartooning something. That is exaggeration, clarity, and simplicity. The most straightforward concept to apply is exaggeration. You're already changing the proportions using our system. Now it's time to change them with purpose. So your first goal should be to identify the parts of the reference that looks odd or unique or goofy, and make that part really big or really small, or any other transformation that will point out the weirdness. In the case of this helmet, I realized that the mouth area has this sort of very weird extrusion. It looks really odd. So I knew that was a great place to start making variations. To cartoon it, we use the exact same explorative copy method than before, only that now we make variations that target the mouthpiece in a specific. The most intuitive thing to do is to make the weird area larger, but you can also go the other way around and make it smaller and see what happens. A particular reference can have a ton of possible things to make fun of. Your goal is to find out what are those areas and make variations with the specific purpose of accentuating the weirdness in some way or another. The next concept to keep in mind is clarity. What I mean by clarity is that every part of a cartoon should be immediately clear to read, something that does not always happen with real-life pictures. A nice rule of thumb I have is that every part should be obvious, noticeable, and explicit. A very common thing you'll use reference in cartoons is for weapons. If you look at the sword, it is filled with interesting shapes, the hilt and pommel and guard and blade. It's all really awesome looking, but because the shapes are very subtle, it is not as obvious. The solution is to exaggerate those areas to make the design more clear at first read. Similar than before, but this time we are making them more visible rather than changing their size. And just to demonstrate this, I'm drawing the sword with the same proportions than the reference. Most of the time you'll achieve this by making those areas thicker, not just bigger. Another example. The boot has layers and layers of metal armor that makes it easier to get lost. I'm sure it's more or less accurate to real life and there is a valid reason for all of that, but the problem is that it is not immediately clear what's going on or what part does what. So our goal now is to make some adjustments so the separation of layers of armor is clear and easy to read. Again, you can play with the proportions to make some things bigger, but this principle is all about making sure everything is readable, and that includes making some of these leaps at the borders thicker, and this is important, eliminating some of the noise by adding empty space around it. If everything is clumped up altogether, it is hard to read, so don't be afraid of outright deleting some sections that appear in the reference. That's the reason why my version do not have any belts. There was no space for them on the back, and I think the end result looks fine. So hopefully it's clear how important it is for a cartoony drawing to be easily read. Every part should be obvious and noticeable, and if they are not, you should delete them. The final concept I came up with is simplicity. Even if everything is all nice and clear, if there is too much information, too much things, then the drawing will tend to not feel cartoony. This principle is similar to the principle of clarity, but this time we want to make sure the things that we are drawing are simple to begin with. In practice, this means that you do not want to follow the reference one-to-one, and you may need to remove some pieces and adjust them to your needs. It is a very common situation you'll find yourself all the time. We got a nice reference of an armor to the right and a mannequin to the left. We haven't seen how to make bodies yet, so for now these simple shapes will have to do. We want to adapt the reference on the right to the character on the left, but you'll notice how complicated the reference is. It's filled with layers and layers of differently textured armor, with tons of belts and bolts and textural detail. This is just too complex. If we want to use a version of this armor, we're gonna need to simplify everything. And here comes a nice little technique that I strongly recommend you to use when using this sort of complex reference. Lower the opacity and start tracing over it. Do not trace it exactly as it is. Instead, trace it as you would like it to be. Much more simple, skipping all that unnecessary details and any shapes that you feel you don't need. It's so much easier to be creative and experiment when you're drawing right on top of the reference, and you don't have to worry about being accurate or making all the pieces fit together. Of course, you are forced to stay to the proportions, but we'll take care of that ourselves in the next step. And if you compare the two versions, you'll notice how much I really simplified the original version. It has a lot less stuff going on. It's clearer and it still manages to keep the whole feeling of the original armor. And now the whole process of adapting the details to our mannequin is much easier. We're gonna take this trace over and use it as the source for our variations. We don't need the actual reference anymore, we are replacing it. Because we don't have to do this simplification on the fly as we are drawing, it is much easier to focus on getting everything right on the variation. Now you follow the same steps as before, deconstructing our new reference and making variations and all of that. There are many ways to simplify a complex reference, and a lot of them have to do with the level of complexity of the cartoon you're going for. In this first example, I went for a bit more realistic cartoon, but if you want to draw something even more cartoony, then you'll need to simplify the reference even further. And there it is, a much simpler cartoon version of the exact same reference. There is one last type of problem you will encounter when translating real-life references, and it's related to the concept of simplicity. Patterns. Of anything, any type of shape that's repeated over and over again. In general, any kind of repeating pattern is difficult to cartoonize. So here goes a very simple rule of thumb. Just simplify the pattern by making the shapes of the pattern bigger and made of less quantity of items. This will depend on the style of cartoon. The more cartoony the style, the more simple the pattern should be, with less and bigger shapes. In this example, the armor has all the little rectangles, which I assume are made of leather, with a cord in the center. It's just too many of them. It won't read as a cartoon. So we need to draw less vertical divisions and bigger and less quantity of rectangles. And now it looks a bit more fitting for a cartoon character. Okay, that was it for this lesson on using real-life pictures. In summary, to make a real-life reference match with your cartoons, it's not just a matter of playing with the proportions. You have to keep in mind three concepts or tools at the moment of drawing: exaggeration, clarity, and simplicity. Exaggeration involves playing with the proportions with purpose, thinking about what makes the reference unique or weird or funny, and exaggerate that. Clarity involves making sure everything is properly readable. Two important tools to use here is to thicken and enlarge everything that's important and delete everything else. Simplicity is about not being too complex with the end result. The reference can be complex, but you don't usually want the cartoon version to be. A nice little tool you can use to handle the complexity is to simplify as you're tracing over. This makes the simplification way easier. For the exercises, just grab 10 pieces of real-life reference. I recommend you to go for costumes, which is the most likely thing you'll use real-life reference for. You can also go for other holding items like weapons or potions or books. Make a study of each with at least 5 variations. Try different levels of cartooning, make them more or less realistic, experimenting with your favorite style. And that was it for this video. I'm taking a bit more time to finish the course, not because I wanted, but due to some personal issues. That's also the reason why it's been harder for me to make exclusive videos for YouTube for now. So I think, at least for the next couple of videos, I will be uploading videos from the course. If you're interested in learning more, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Also, any like and comment will help me and the channel a lot. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.